Well, everybody, welcome to our last speaker session of the year 2021. We're really excited to be bringing you one more session. And I know we've already got some people doing the holiday thing, getting ready to get out there and wind down the year. But as we were looking at what potentially we could do to wrap this up, I came across some information from Anthony and it captured my attention. I won't give away the whole detail, but as he started talking about retros, first of all, near and dear to my heart, and then as he looked at radars, some of you may have used retrospective radars before or have seen them used by someone else. I thought, okay, this is interesting. It's fun. Anthony took the time to kind of show me a little bit more about what he's been developing, and I went, this is cool. So not only is it fun, but it's also cool and useful. So my hope today is you'll come away with some ideas about how you can implement some of these things into your work stream that you already have, but also to grow just your appreciation of where we're going. I think it's neat to see, the field of Agile expanding, but us recognizing that it's really important to improve the way we listen. And I'll even say this at scale, which I think is difficult, right? So as a good coach, you listen one-on-one. If you're a teams coach, you listen one-on-many to your teams. But then it gets kind of challenging. How do you listen 1 to 100 or 1 to 200 or 300? How do you get that kind of information to make any sense of it at scale? And I think Anthony's going to introduce some things to us using this retrospective radar. So again, I don't want to steal any of his thunder, but I'm very excited to be here. And Anthony, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us at our last speaker session of the year. So Anthony, I'll hand it over to you.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you so very much, Isaac and John. Hello to everyone. If you would, tell me what it is that you would describe you do, whether that's one sentence, one word, whatever. Put it in the chat so I understand a little bit more about who's listening today. If you had to describe what you do, where you spend your daylight working hours, what would you call that? Agile coach, Scrum master. Okay, let's see what else we have. Agilist. I like that one, David. Agile consultant from John. All right. I have avoided the term agile coach, not because I dislike it, but because I don't think it quite encompasses so much of it. I mean, for me, in my job at IBM, where I lead the agile transformation work for bringing agility, business agility in particular, to digital sales worldwide, there is an amount of coaching that I do, but it is just far beyond that. So it's interesting because I don't actually have a title for myself. I mean, they gave me one, but I don't really know what I would call myself. Agilist would probably be kind of like David. That would probably cover it. So I want to being present for folks, meeting people where they are. That's awesome, John. Thank you for sharing that. So For me, today, what I wanted to do was share some thinking. And if you're like me, you probably have had a little bit of the framework biases creep into agility, right? Where I first learned in 2009 about Scrum, and all I was told was that was Agile. That's all I knew. And so it was interesting to me because once I started learning about Lean, what they were doing with Kanban, I learned about Six Sigma. There was all this expansion of knowledge that really helped me understand the way of thinking about agility. And what was fascinating for me is when I read the Agile Manifesto for the first time, I was not a software developer, but the principles and values that they wrote, like someone codified my brain. Like I've been thinking this way my whole life, it felt like, and here's someone who's valuing what I value the way I value it. And so from that standpoint, it was really gold. It was also similar to when Simon Sinek's The Golden Circle, Start With Why, was like, that's how I do things. And so I've since gone on to learn quite a bit about myself to try to understand from a self-reflection standpoint, why am I the way I am? Now I will leave the intro with this. I found out about Myers-Briggs personality profiles, an interesting grouping tool. I found out I'm ENTJ, about 3% of the population. And then I found out about strengths finders, and I found out that I'm strategic, ideation, activator, relator, command. Those are my top 5 strengths. And then I found out about Enneagram, and I found out I'm a type 1 wing 2. And so what's interesting is the layers of this have really given me a very holistic perspective of how to learn about myself. And that represents how I then present myself and learn about others. But in that learning, it's always bound by relational dynamics. You can only know so many people and know them well. It's always a limitation, right? So people don't scale. So in the roles that I'm in, where I've got thousands or hundreds and then thousands of people, depending on the scope of what I'm working on, it's challenging because I can't know everyone. But I learned I didn't need to. What I needed to understand was how was I able to aggregate the learnings from those people? How could we take insights at scale? Because people don't scale, but the insights would, especially if you had a way to do that. And what I want to represent to you is a way to have how qualitative feedback, qualitative data leads to quantitative insights. And so that's kind of the talk of today. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just so we can dive in. And I'm going to make sure I'm in here. And let's make sure that's working. Do you see you should see a PowerPoint slide or you see an Excel document? I'm not sure where. Do you see Retrospective Radar on the screen or do you see an Excel spreadsheet?
Retrospective Radar. That's what we see.
Great. It's just with different, I'm on WebEx or Teams or Zoom, and you just never quite know in a dual monitor environment how that's going to go. So I'm glad you're looking at what I'm looking at. Great. So that's the topic for today. I am very interactive, and we're going to play some a little bit interactive in Mural a bit later. So what I wanted to do was say the ground rules are there's no dumb questions. They're just dumb answers, and I'm the only one responsible for the answers, so you can't possibly ask a dumb question. So feel free to just unmute your mic and interrupt me. That is A-okay in a group of this size. Okie dokie. I also am unable to read the chat while I'm going through this. So John or Isaac, if you need me to interrupt me with something in the chat, please do. All right. So with those ground rules, let's have some fun. So when I first talk about the idea of reflecting or retrospectives, the first thing I'm trying to say is, well, how do you know what you're reflecting on? And I talk about the importance of visualizing for awareness. You have to be able to see it. It makes it much easier to talk about. If it's in my head or it's in a Trello board or a Jira board somewhere, great, you can reflect. But if you haven't visualized it somewhere when you're talking about it, that's actually a huge value. So I've learned the power of that. And the three things I would say is you can't fix what's unknown, you can't align on what's not shared, and you can't identify root cause without insight. And these are the reasons I'm so big on visualizing the truth. I don't care what the truth is. If the truth sucks, at least it's true. If it's great, it's true. But we want to be able to talk about what's true. And true is both based in the world of data and subjectivity. So we want to understand perspectives around how people feel about things. So I find visualizing the truth to be super helpful. I also find that when you do that, you're able to highlight the dissonance and then represent courageous feedback. Why do I point that out? Because in many, many, many organizations, give me the thumbs up or thumbs down on this with the emotions if you want, the emojicons there. But it's this. In many teams, there is only so much they're willing to share before it's career limiting, or that's not the culture. And so you're hoping that you're getting good feedback, but all you know is usually it's the squeaky wheels that get the grease, that small percentage. So that psychological safety of the team then becomes super important. And then there's a thought that's not common, which is how do you create psychological safety across teams? And this is part of the root of what we're going to talk about today. So if you have the visualization for awareness, then you're elevating for insights. Insights let us ask better questions. And I do that by highlighting where we have a dissonance, a difference between we say this, we measure this. There's a delta. There's a gap. Why is that? And that has to become a safe thing to do. And then you represent that courageous feedback because you're showing that someone had the courage to say it and you reward that. Let's keep moving. And this won't take very long because I just want to get into the fun stuff. But I want you to then think about how do you prioritize work. At the end of, if you're in Scrum, which I think most of the people here are, you have a retrospective. And I've talked with Diana and Esther about this. They created retros, right? And the idea was how do you prioritize value? How do you understand the things that deliver value or that are not delivering value? And how do you pivot and iterate because of that? So when you think about this, teams get really good at this. Really good teams figure out how to have those hard conversations so that they know where the value lies and they make changes, right? They have a hypothesis, they test it, they measure it, and then rinse and repeat again and again until you get to the place where you decide yes or no, we're going to commit or not commit to something based on enough data. Well, I call that the art of subtraction. So if you think about this, if I had if I had the ability to put into a formula, the way I would describe this, it would be a little bit like middle school math, right? Where you've got the parentheses and you've got current systems, current workload plus current process, right? And then you got the multiplier, and then you've got business as usual, things we need to cut, task lists, whatever. And the point is until you address what it is you can remove, multiplication scaling is dumb. It will always scale everything inside the parentheses. So if you have wasted too many meetings, you have waste with too many approval processes, or whatever your issues are, scaling will scale it all. It'll scale all the mess, not just the good stuff, because it's dumb. So what we have to do is say, how do we first eliminate or mitigate the low value, the waste, so that when we multiply, when we scale, we only scale that which is useful. Well, it's just hard to do with data alone. It's why you need feedback, because you want to know why, not just what. So we're going to talk about how that works today. I think obviously feedback is essential, because without feedback, I can have a spreadsheet with any number of metrics on it, and I can make those numbers say whatever I want, because there's very little context for numbers. But feedback is by its very nature context. So we want to have feedback to either validate or invalidate numbers, so that we're not making data-driven decisions by only using quantitative data. We also want to use qualitative data. I won't read the quote to you, but I think that the key obviously is direct feedback, not a survey, not a poll, direct verbatim feedback. And you have to do this across teams. So this is where the scaling gets into it. And by the way, if any questions, comments, feedback so far, just open your mic. It's totally cool. So if I'm going to do that, how do I do it? I have to visualize the dissonance and represent the courageous feedback. I have to be willing to talk about that there's ways we would get people to share this information. What is the feedback? Oh, it's cut off. We might use tools for this. You might do an NPS thing, but you also might think about what it looks like. What it looks like for people to represent that on the dimensions, right? So this is one of the things we use at IBM. We call this the Agile Health Radar, and we have 8 dimensions that we measure, and we measure that over time, and we compare it to the aggregate in the middle. And it gives us a way to understand those dimensions so that we are getting a weighting system, a scoring, an understanding around the types of feedback that we get. Feedback, though, isn't just a thing for the team. Most retrospectives aren't as successful as I think they could be, not because of the retrospective, but because of what happens after the retrospective. So let's do any example. Any example is someone says, we've got a vision, we've got a dream, we've got an idea, and that becomes a strategy. Leadership comes up with a way that they think that should be realized, and then it gets sent down to teams. And then the teams come back and say, okay, well, we've experimented with this, we've measured it, we've had some experiences based on this over a little bit of time. Here's our feedback on how that's going. Well, that should then be evaluated against what was first proposed by the leadership, right? There should be insights gained that are shared directly from the feedback, and then they should make adjustments so that any new strategy is directly related to because of the feedback from the teams. Said another way, feedback is what drives strategy after version 1.0, right? You don't know when you first start what strategies are going to work. You have these ideas, but you should be very, very willing to adapt and change those over time. We normally don't have a problem with this when it comes to, hey, we're going to go deliver X. Then the team figures out how they're going to deliver X, and they pivot within the team. I'm talking about if I said go to Chicago by Friday and don't spend more than this, and you get there, what I actually want to know is not just did you get to Chicago, did we accomplish the outcome we wanted from going to Chicago? Well, that better be clear. And if it's not, why are we going to Chicago? And then turns out that you stopped in St. Louis because of the trip you decided to take. And it turns out there was far more value for the kind of trip you were on in St. Louis than Chicago. You should be able to come back with data and insight and say, we went to Chicago, we did that, but on our way, we made a detour through St. Louis. And you know what we found? Way better for our market, for what we want to do. So our recommendation is actually let's not go back to Chicago right now. Let's go focus on St. Louis, right? And I use this as a metaphor because it's kind of like GPS. In the past, I came from the world of sales. In the past, I would have a Mapsco, which was literally a printed map in a spiral binder. And you would here's the street you're going to follow, and then turn to page whatever to see where that street continues. And I would know where I was going to see my big clients. And so I would take a highlighter and map the best routes for the most efficient drives. This is before GPS because I'm old. So GPS rolls around, and now I don't need a Mapsco. But in our organizations, many people still want to hand us the Mapsco with the predetermined route. We need you to go here. We need you to take it this way. We need you to do it this way. And we need you to not veer from this because we think we know better, right? Waterfall. So what ends up happening is we say we have real-time data that informs how it's going to get to that destination. And we're able to use that data to then validate some things together so that we can tell you, leaders, hey, this idea, maybe not so great, or maybe, well, what you didn't realize is it's 10 times greater than even you're thinking. We've discovered these things. Those are the things we want to chat about there. I'm going to pause because I see chat blowing up. John or Isaac, anything I need to know about since I can't look at that easily right now?
No, boy, I'll tell you, I've been throwing some of your quotes out there because Anthony, what you're saying really is resonating, at least with me in my experience, and I hope also with the others. But as you've been putting some of these quotes out there, I've been grabbing them, being like, wow, that's really good. And just to your recent example of the top-down map, that's something I see with teams right now where I'm at. So you're hitting home for me, and I hope for everybody else. Again, you can put something in the chat if it's resonating with you. But so far, I'm tracking with you.
Great. Anybody else have since we're at a slight pause point here, any thoughts, pushback, disagreement, agreement, anything at all? Go ahead and open your mic. I'll wait about 10 seconds. Would you agree by show of thumbs up that feedback is super critical in an organization, right? Yeah.
Yes.
It's huge. It's huge. Yeah. In fact, here's my quote. Feedback is a gift. Aggregated feedback is actionable intelligence. And I quote this a lot because it's the thinking that goes beyond the retro, right? Because it goes beyond retros. If I'm doing 360-degree feedback in an organization, or if I'm doing one-on-ones, right, that's helpful. That's super powerful. But if I'm a manager who has a team of 10 people and I've got 10 one-on-ones, even if I have 10 different roles, there's going to be something culturally or process or system oriented that is probably going to show up in more than one one-on-one. And the aggregated insight is probably useful to attack the meta things or the larger thing, or root cause analysis of why does a developer and a UX designer and a marketer all talk about the same issue. Well, that's something I should understand. And when you start to capture and understand that over time, and I gave 3 very different roles, but what you're going to be able to do is understand how do you act on that in a more meaningful and intentional way. So aggregated feedback becomes actionable intelligence.
I'll ask a silly question.
Please.
Going right back to the beginning, people don't scale. Could you be more specific about that?
Yeah. Who is this talking? I don't have let me just come out of the full screen.
This is David.
Hi, David. People don't scale. Hey, David, if I needed you to be in 2 different one-on-ones at exactly the same time, could you do it?
Yeah. No.
Okay, so David is superhuman. All right.
It depends who I want to answer. Keep 2 screens up, go back and forth. No, I certainly wouldn't do that. Okay, I got you.
Yeah. You can't replicate yourself. Right. So people don't scale, and I can't do things that in a consistent, repeated way by myself. That's where automation is helpful. So here's a way to think about this at a kind of an abstracted level. And then John, I see your thing. I'm going to jump on that. Just lost my thought. Hold on. I'll come back to it. I hate when that happens. The older I get, the more frequently this happens. You can't, the people don't scale. Right. Okay. So if I'm looking at the amount of effort I put towards a thing and I want to understand that, I would measure productivity, effort, blocker. I mean, there's a lot of things I can measure that. But how do you understand your ability to be consistent in an area where it required you the first time, but doesn't require you after that? So here's the quote. Think about it this way. If you need critical thinking skills, put a person there. If it does not require critical thinking skills, you probably would be a benefit from automation, right? So automation of a machine learning or rule-oriented logic scales because it's just based on criteria and thresholds. It runs again and again and again and again. It doesn't require you because there's no critical thinking skills. It's just got some logic. But if you need someone to actually process and wonder and explore, I don't care how good the machine learning is, this is where you want a human. And so this is what I'm talking about. You don't scale. I can't put you as part of a repeatable process without tying you down to a place and time. But I can take your thinking, codify that, and then try to automate around that when possible so that it frees you up to go do more of that.
But I was thinking my intelligence scales, same as yours and everybody else, right? Because we use like 8% of our intelligence or our brain. Right. I know, going deep, and like the maximum intelligence that people use, like Einstein, is like 11% of their brain. So a bit off subject, but that's stuck in my brain, so I had to get it out. Thanks. I'm getting old too.
Thank you very much. Yeah. And John said, in his opinion, feedback is good if it's egalitarian. It can be bad if it's one way or enforced. 100%. Tell me about this right now is probably not going to get you great feedback. Instead, it's soliciting something. But that means I'm not here to enforce feedback. I'm here to enforce that I'm available to make sure you're heard, seen, and valued. Do you see the difference? It's not a one-on-one, for example, is not what's in it for me as a manager, as a leader. A one-on-one's what's in it for the person. How do I serve them? What do they need, right? How do I remove blockers and impediments for them? How do I do to help skill them up? Those are the two reasons a manager should exist, right? So if I do those things, that has less to do with, do we have a one-on-one for feedback? Where's the feedback? Has way more to do with, do I have an opportunity for you to be seen, heard, and valued? And then if I have a team, does a team have an opportunity to be seen, heard, and valued? And if I have lots of teams, do we have insight across teams so that they can all feel seen, heard, and valued? Right? Feedback should lead to change. And it often doesn't. So it doesn't because it either stops with the team, stops with the person, never gets shared, or there's no mechanism in place. And that's what we're going to demonstrate here in just a few minutes. I want to make sure I'm good on time, so let me keep moving. And then Isaac, you're capturing the stuff. That's great. Let's keep moving. Let me come back into this. I'll just show it to you in PowerPoint real quick because I have it, but then I'm going to pop back out. So there's the quote. And then let me just talk about this. So on the right-hand side, I've got some data for you to read, but I'm actually going to show you this together in real time. We're going to play. Now, what you're looking at is two things. One is the where and how data is captured, the feedback is captured. And I'm going to break into that. On the right is how we're actually parsing that aggregated data in an MVP that we built just to get it done. But what we're going to talk about is the retrospective radar itself, which is a way to collect what added value, what didn't add value, what are things we could change, or what went well, what did not go well. Pick your language, pick your, how you want to do that. But it's the idea of...
Did you share this a few weeks ago on LinkedIn?
I did.
Okay, good. Okay.
Mm-hmm. I did. And so we're gonna dive into this in just a moment. But then there's a way to represent it. How do you aggregate something and then filter by it? This is just Excel, right? Because MVP, right? Minimum, but viable. How do you then pivot on that data and start to aggregate that feedback? And I'll show you how we did that. So let me stop sharing just for a moment and come back over here and dive into this. Okay. I'm going to share a link here in chat for Mural. And what it's going to let us do is have a place to play together because I want you to see what this looks like. I'm going to share the link. If you have never signed into Mural, you can enter as a visitor if you've never used this tool. So you don't feel like you have to go sign up for an account right now. What I'm going to do is share this one with you guys. So right here in chat, if you'll click this, that should bring you to my screen. And I'm just going to go ahead and, I am, for the sake of this, going to go ahead and jump in. I will share the screen briefly because I just want to show everybody what they should be looking at. It should look like this. This is where you should be with me. And we'll walk through it together in just a moment. So I'll see at the bottom who's joined right now. Isaac's in, Alex is in, I need the rest of you to click through to join so we can play together. I will go through the basics of Mural. Don't have to worry about that. If you've never used it, I'll make it super simple. But this is the best part of the whole talk, and I'd love for you to come play. So click the link in the chat, and you'll be able to join us here. Is anybody having a problem with that? Just open your mic and ask, and I'll try to solve it real quick.
The link's not working for me, so I'm just copying it.
Try it in a different browser. I have found sometimes different browsers make a difference.
I'm not getting the option to log in as a guest. I tend to use Miro rather than Mural, but don't know. Is this a separate link or something?
Again, I would copy the link, try a different browser, see if that makes a difference. I've never had someone truly never be able to get in. It just depends on the browser issues in the OS. But
Yeah, I'm in the same browser.
Eventually,
it's okay now.
Okay, different browser. Which browsers are working for you guys?
I'm in the same one. It is Chrome.
Chrome.
I'm
Okay.
in Chrome too, and they brought me right in there. Something with Miro I've used before is if you open an incognito window, sometimes maybe a cookie got stuck or something previously, and so if you can't
That
get
can
in
be
with
helpful.
window, yeah, maybe incognito. But
So Patricia, Harmony, John, are y'all able to get in?
I'll get in. Yeah. Give me a second. Sorry.
All right.
Because I can asking me for a password for some reason.
Yeah, it's making me join.
Normally it would give you a link to say, I've never seen that because it always gives me the option to join as visitor.
Yeah, I've never seen this either.
So let me try again. Let me see. Copy the link. Am I doing it? Visitor? Oh, visitor link. It's because I clicked the wrong one, guys. That would be user error. Picnic, right? Problem in chair, not in computer.
You're not scaling well.
I am absolutely not scaling well. So let me paste this one. Try this one. That's the visitor link. Second one should work for you. My bad. That's inside IBM. We all use it, so it's very normal for me to click the first copy link and just not think about it. So that would explain that. All right. Is everybody able to get in now? There we go. Lots more people popping in. All right. So let me just walk you through it. And I'm going to actually gather everybody to me. So I'm going to summon them, everybody to me. And I'm going to start here. So what is this? It's my way of representing no matter where you sit, either as a team sitting together in a physical location or if you're distributed teams, doesn't matter. It's a way for us to come together. And it's based on the concept that after you have finished your iteration, whether that's you're using cumulative flow with Kanban or you doing Scrum, sprints, I don't care. It's the idea that you're coming together to actually talk about what does it look like? What are you learning together? The learning opportunity is the point. And so what we do is we create a way to combine the reflection meetings and planning meetings into one instead of two. This is how we use it, right? And what we're doing is we're bringing everybody together who comes with the what went well that's worth sharing with the team. Not a stand and deliver of here's what I did this week. This is not what that is. This is of what I'm learning. Here's what's going well for me, or here's what's adding value. Here's things that I'm stuck on that I think maybe others might know the answer to, or I solved this, no one else needs to solve this. And this is not just by role, right? This is basically, you can be a larger thing for your teams, however you set your teams up. And so what I do is we actually bring people together and we fill out the workboard. We actually describe the working session. I have everybody's name and date. I'm summoning you so you can't go anywhere else. You have to be with me for a minute. And then who's there. And this gives us a history because we can save this link. And each retrospective or each time we reflect together, we have a new clean board to work off of. Okay? So here's how it works. I really, really like Stephen Covey's circle of control, influence, and concern. And I talk about this because I want people to not tell me what they can't do. I want them to tell me what they can do. And I find it super helpful to show that circle of control is the biggest one because I want them to be self-directed and self-managed, right? So circles in the soup, yep, you may have heard of that too. So the circle of control is anything you can personally, you don't need permission, just go do it. Influence is what you can influence, concern is what you're concerned about. That's how it started. But then I met this cat named Pat Kua, and he basically had this idea of at the end of a retrospective, how do you self-prioritize? And his idea was there's 5 things you can do in life. You can start to do something, stop doing something, do less of, keep doing or do more of. You don't have any more choices. This is all you got, people. So there's 5 things. So of that, where do I want to go? This thing I wanted to do based on what I just learned, where would I prioritize that? Would I do less of? And what it does is it gives you a nice little prioritization. And it was built around each team member getting to do this. It still works that way. It's great. But I had this idea, what happens if I overlaid one on top of the other? And that's actually where the retrospective radar came out. So let's just real quickly, let me just show you the retrospective area, and then I'm going to release everybody in just a minute, and you can do what you want in here. But you notice I've got all these sticky notes, different colors. The colors are just so each person can have their own color and be identified, right? That's all that is. Then what happens is they come in and they say, oh, I'm going to be blue today, and I need to share something that went really well today for me this week. I just learned something, and so I'm going to share learning here, whatever that is, right? I'm going to describe it, and I'm going to do it by describing what it is, why I'm sharing it, and what the ask is at the end of that, if there's an ask, right? And I just kind of basic user story kind of format, right? So this is really what that is. But what I'm trying to do is help give people the ability to share what's worth sharing. And that's what I describe right here above in the nice orange text. Only add sticky notes that are valuable to share with the team. Because we're trying to figure out at this point, through your retro, what are you learning? How do we get better together? How do we stop making mistakes? How do we, whatever it is. So in this case, what went well? What did not go well? And then they come pre-prepared. So they come to the retro with their 2 or 3 or 4, however many sticky notes, so that when you get in here, you're not actually taking time to write them in. What you do when you come together is you group them and you find the similar patterns or dissimilar, and you start talking about it so that the team starts to have an appreciation and understanding of the larger picture. This is super helpful to actually facilitate this way. From that, you discover what are new and improved ideas. That's what comes out.
Are you still giving kudos to people?
Absolutely. And we do that real time during the discussion, right? Because we want people to feel seen, heard, and valued. Super important. Absolutely. And I'm just giving you the kind of the fastest version for time, right? But yeah, there's a lot. Let me go ahead and release y'all so you can, actually one more thing to show you. So once we're going to start here together, we're going to start in the retrospective area, and I'm going to release everybody right now. So you're not following me. You can do wherever you want on the board. But I would ask you to pick a color, pull it down, and highlight one thing that went exceptionally well for you this week, and just pull it down. With Mural, which is similar to a lot of tools, once you click on it one time, it gives you a toolbar. The second icon is a zoom to sticky note. If you click that, it'll take you to the sticky note. Why is this important? You don't want to resize the sticky notes, right? You want to zoom in. So the sticky notes are like on a whiteboard. And if you zoom out, that's like stepping away from the whiteboard. And if you zoom in, that's like walking up to your sticky note. So don't make the sticky notes bigger, just change your zoom level, okay? So go ahead and put something that you did. Someone got out of bed today. That is an accomplishment. Well done. And what I want you to do is just put something that went well. And then over to the right, I'd like you to add something that did not go well. So I'll go ahead and play along too, and I'll add my own in here. So what went well for me was I got, let's see, I had a breakthrough how to select OKRs. Why is that important? So that I can share with the leadership team, shift from goals to OKRs. And there's no ask for me, so I'm going to leave it there. So that's mine. And then I'll do the same thing for something that did not go so well last. It would be last week in this case. Last week was there's too many meetings. And the reason for that is because I did not prioritize my calendar well. And then the ask is really, about this is going to be, I need to decline low value meetings. Okay. Something like that. Just trying to. Okay. Something like that. That's me. So if you've added stuff in here, what we would do is we would first group these and figure out which of these are similar patterns. Now in this group today, probably not going to be a lot of similar patterns, but let's go and see, right? So I had a breakthrough on how to reflect OKRs. I ran my first strat planning session. We could come together, plan priorities. That's really good. New hire onboarding, got out of bed, made it to this amazing session. We had a shared understanding what we'll do together. Oh, look at that. That's similar. In fact, I would say these three are kind of grouped in the idea of some sort of, these two for sure. I had a good session working on DevOps. Okay. So these are things that you did that are worth sharing with others. Now, in this case, not always the best examples, right? Because we're just having fun together. But what we would focus on is what's worth sharing that others would benefit from knowing, not what did I do, right? That's one of the big things. Let's go over to the what did not go well. Only had a 2-minute heads up from a recruiter when interviewing for a coach. Oof, that is rough. I was requesting new hardware and access for new onboarding tickets. Okay, too many meetings. I'm a mirror user. I can't seamlessly steal this. Provide a mirror version. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Okay, now here's the thing. Once we've discussed these, and for the sake of time, we're not going to, right? But once you would discuss and group these, someone might go, that's a great idea, right? So I really like that, and I want to do that too. So let's, I had my first, we could come together plan for the next 3 months. I actually would love to know how he did that or she did that, because what I want to do is do that myself. So I'm going to duplicate the sticky, which I'm just doing Apple D for this, right? And I'm going to put it over here as a new and improved idea for me. And I'm going to do that by changing it to my color sticky note, right? Whoops, wrong color. So there's me. So now I've got this new and improved idea for me. Someone else's thing, but it totally applies to me. That's worth me stealing, copying, right, whatever, taking, because it's good. And if someone has a new idea based on what they've seen, they would go type it over here. So at the end of the day, you're adding things that you feel are, well, another way to say it, how do you just get 1% better next week? Just 1%, right? What would that look like? You're probably going to have a learning here, at least one that would apply to you. And then you would put it over here in this column. So, that's what you would do next. Now, this is just a standard retrospective. It's a standard reflective from the standpoint of we just want to hear from each other, celebrate each other, talk about it, and share it. But this codifies it. This gives us context, right? Now, here's where the retrospective radar comes in. Remember I said it's not that the retrospective's at the problem. It's what happens after the retro. So what we want you to do now is grab the color sticky notes that made sense to you, that were yours, and duplicate them. So if this one went well, I'm going to duplicate this one that I said I was going to do, and I'm going to put it in start doing for myself. So I just duplicated the one I put here in what's new and improved. I duplicated it by either right-clicking and choosing duplicate, or in my case, Apple D or Command D for PC. And then I drag the duplicate over to the radar. I leave everything alone on here. I don't get rid of these, but I do duplicate them so that I can get the duplicate over, and then I put it where it goes. Now let me walk you through this, and we'll go quick. If it's in the center circle, that's what you're doing. You're doing that because you manage you just fine. So in the teal and that middle, that's for you. But let me take one that I saw that did not go well, right? Someone said they couldn't shamelessly steal it, so they think maybe they need a license, or they need to talk to someone about that. So they're going to take that. I'm going to duplicate the Miro one, and I'm going to say I'd like to start doing that, but I can't do that. I'd have to get permission. So I'm going to go to my manager or my leader, right? So that's this middle circle. And what I'm going to show you is the circle of influence is what they can influence that maybe you can't, right? Because this is where hierarchy comes into any organization. You're always going to have it. But then let's go over here to the side and figure another one that did not go well. We're working on I can't use that one. Only had a 2-minute heads up from a recruiter interviewing for a coach. You know what? This happens all the time. Our HR department does this to me all the time. I want our head of HR or the HR leaders to know about, stop doing this. So I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to put it here and stop doing. And that's not something for my manager to stop. It's not something for me to stop. That's the system. The system is set up to do this to us all the time, and it's really ineffective. So that's a systemic thing. That's a leadership thing that they need to be aware that's got an effect. Now, what I would like to do is write them like this. Tell me what it is, why that's an issue, and what you would like us to do about it to make it successful or a non-issue, right? That's what I would have you do. I would coach you to do it that way. So go ahead and grab some and duplicate. Just put them wherever over here. But let's, just for the sake, I'm going to go ahead and just grab a few more and do the same thing just so that we can populate a bit. And I'm not even going to pay attention to where they're going. I'm just doing this for the sake of demonstration. Let's do this one, duplicate. Okay. And I'm going to make sure I have one in every quadrant. I normally wouldn't, but just for the sake of today, I'm demonstrating something because we're going to use this data in just a minute. So let's say it looks something like this, right? Something like this is what we have. And now we've got feedback for ourselves to prioritize, right? Our managers to understand and our senior leaders to act on, right? So that's what we would have. I'm again, totally faking this for the sake of time, but what I wanted to get to is that that's what happens. Now, what I want to do is export this data. This all stays in Mural right now, but that's not helpful for how I want to parse the data. So Mural has a very useful feature, and if you'll come to me, I'll summon you so you can see how this works. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my left shift key down. I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to right click, and I can download, either go to GitHub or download a CSV. If I download a CSV, and I'll show it to you, what does that look like? Looks like this one. So everything we just did there, the actual verbatim text of what was written is right here. Every bit of verbatim, right off the sticky notes of what y'all wrote is here. What color was it is here. And then, all the other detail. Now, why is that important? Because right now it's not very useful to me. So let me show you what I would do instead. I already created, let me come back to this. I already created a key. And I figured out that if I make anything in the circle of concern in the stop doing segment this color, then I now have a way to map it every time. Any sticky note with this color must have come from circle of concern, stop doing. Any sticky note with this color must have come circle of concern, stop doing, right? Or circle of influence, stop doing. So it's just a little hack. I had to figure out a way to get it. So this is just about what I did for the MVP. And now I can export the data so that I can pivot it. Now, we're not going to play with our data anymore. I am going to draw you to the last part of this, which is what do you do with all that? Well, let's say I have, what is this, like 9, 10 teams. Each team does their retros, right? So if I want to know what the apps team has done, here's the apps team. They've had 176 sticky notes in the last year. Of those, 42 of them were for senior leaders, which is just less than a quarter of them, and about 3/4 were for their managers. Of that, we've got the majority in start doing, which is we have ideas. We should listen to them because these are ideas. We have a bunch in less of stop the pain, stop the waste, you're killing me smalls, right? This is the stuff we should pay attention to, but it tells you the kind of the ranking. And then what I'm able to do is just say, just show me circle of concern. What are we talking to our leaders about that we want our leaders to stop doing? I can filter that, or less of, or what do I want my managers to have, do less of? And let's do less of and stop doing together, right? I can filter like this. And here's what's cool. When I scroll down, guess what? There is the verbatims, and I did lorem ipsum here, but there's the actual verbatims of just that filtered group. It's just pivot tables, right? But I'm actually able now to start understanding context. What are the things that they're asking less of or stop doing? What are the things they're wanting to start doing by team, across teams, by market, however you want to slice and dice it, that's totally doable. So we get insight. The first bit of insight is that we were able to see the total participation by team. Now, sticky notes are just a proxy, right? They're a measurement of a level of engagement. But what I have found, generally speaking, is that generally, when they give me more feedback, they're more engaged as teams. Generally, we have higher performing teams as a result. Not always. It's a correlation, not a causality, but I find it to be very true. I also find it to be true, the quality of management leadership is often reflected here and the relationships they have. By the circle gives you an interesting one too, because this starts to show where does the feedback go. When it's really high going to senior leadership, that says we've got a lot of systemic issues to work on. When it's low, we're solving for the more localized things, generally speaking, right? So I'm just giving you some aggregates. If I look at all of the segments together, I start to understand patterns of where the effort is going. Less of and start doing in the top 2, then more of, keep doing and stop doing. But then I did this really fun thing. Each manager, because we did this first in a sales organization, right? I had 26 teams doing this. And what we did is we said to the managers, when you have something in one of those stop, start, keep doing more of, less of for you each week, because we did 1 week sprints, 1 week iterations, tell us what you're going to do about it. Is it not yet started? That's a default. Is it under consideration? Well, your request is good. I got to think about that, or I need details. It's in progress. We're working on that. It's a long term, but it's in progress. It's not going to be soon. I've escalated it. I can't solve that, but I know who can. I don't know what you're asking for. I need more info. Completed or declined, or it's a duplicate of something else, right? These are the categories we came up with. But the point was we published this. So guess what? Everybody's feedback gets acted upon. Everybody. And if it's not, you know it. And you can see which managers aren't starting. Like, there's accountability across the board. So now we have the ability to start looking at, well, what kind of feedback is it? Well, the majority of feedback is little easy stuff, but you had no way to capture it. Before, they were just complaints. But now it's data. And it's data with a narrative and context. So now we can start showing them, hey, those things you've asked for, we've done most of those. And other stuff is under consideration or in progress. You are being seen, heard, and valued. And you know what was fascinating? We did this for a year in the pilot program. The quality of feedback went way up when they saw we acted on it. When they felt seen, heard, and valued, the quality and the quantity both increased. We got more feedback. And I'm using a template, just fake data stuff to represent here, because I'm not going to show you the proprietary stuff, obviously. But
good question.
Yeah, we got a question. But the point is, go ahead.
So what tool are you using to put your stories in?
I just showed you. I just exported from Mural and I import into, this is an Excel file. I just imported in here using a data import.
Okay. The reason I ask is that if you're using Jira or whatever IBM uses, is that you could actually send this, you can export it to
You're correct.
that tool, creating stories. And the reason I say that is because, talking about feedback just quickly, is when I do retrospectives, we actually have I suggest to have a backlog, and that management team works on that and they look at it together. So we do try and get that feedback, but I like the graphics here, which is great.
Okay. Well, it's insights. It's not just for pretty, right? I actually want to start to ask better questions. And when you group things into unique categories of visualization, which we go back to that visualization I started with in the presentation, this is why. If I can visualize the truth, I can do something with it. So whether that's at the Retrospective Radar meeting itself with the retro, or it's in the dashboards that we represent. But yeah, automate through to your CRMs or your Jira, your whatever the tools are, don't really care. You're right, automate to that point. But to build an MVP, I didn't have all that. So I just started with what I had, which was Excel.
I'm not being critical. I think what you've done is great.
Yeah, thank you. So this is the idea, but the beauty was we published this internally on our own internal website. So anybody in IBM can see it. And what we would do is we would represent the aggregate each week. We would talk about this, and we did one more thing. I took the text from each month. I did this monthly. I took the text from each month by category, and I ran it through Watson Natural Language Processor. So we were able to have machine learning begin to understand sentiment, tone, keyword frequency, et cetera, and then represent that so that we could start to extrapolate out of 26 very different teams with hundreds of people what were the common areas. And it was super helpful because, for example, one of the things we learned was that in digital sales, we had a certain percentage of the effort is revenue generating. And then due to back-end systems, there's just work you got to do, BAU kind of stuff. And what I was able to show was just how costly that was. What was the amount of effort that was not revenue generating that they were doing? Because again, sellers, right? You would do it different for software developers. You would do it different for HR. But the principle is the same. I was trying to represent that in a way. And this was the data that validated those stories. Right? And it was quantifiable because when I do this at scale, I'm taking qualified data feedback, I'm weighting it through natural language processing, and then I'm representing that. So now it wasn't an opinion, and it certainly wasn't just a complaint. Now it was an opportunity to actually address maybe some core things, some root cause, with the data that supported it, with a narrative that was undeniable. And this was the beginning of some significant culture change, which is the point of agility. So it's a big deal, but the key is you had to make it scalable. It wasn't enough to just do it on one team at a time. We had to get past that limitation, and this was how we addressed it. So being cognizant of,
as well?
I'm sorry?
Are you sharing positive as well?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I just think in most cultures, if we don't address the negative, sharing the positive is hollow. So I actually want to focus on the negative more often than not to be negative focused, but because if you don't solve, patting them on the head for the good things, it becomes less effective over time. So I actually want to...
The key word there was culture. So if they're showing a positive, then they already know, okay, this is good for us. We'll keep this and we'll build it into the culture.
Sure,
and then, as you say, add the conflictual stuff.
Right. Because conflict's not bad, right? Unhealthy conflict is bad, but conflict is how you innovate. You don't innovate by agreeing. So what we want to do is make it psychologically safe to do that. So we reward participation and we encourage candid feedback and we visualize all of it so that there's no hiding. And this really, the one question people often ask is, what about anonymity? If you want to do it anonymously, you could, but I think over time that actually hurts your case. Because what we're trying to get to is, can we change the culture? Right. Yeah. If I change a behavior, that behavior changes for as long as I inspect it. But if I change the mindset, then the behaviors will follow. I'm not here for behavior modification, right? A transformation is a from and to state. The to state does not resemble the former state. We're not optimizing a caterpillar with butterfly wings. We're becoming a butterfly. And there is no question it's the same organism, same DNA, but the expression is so different that one does not resemble the other on purpose, right? Any other questions, thoughts, feedbacks? I want to be cognizant we have 8 minutes. I've covered a ton as fast as I know how, but it's always tough to do it in an hour. Mic's open, feel free.
I always like asking questions, so I apologize for you guys. Please, because I do have one more question, please jump in first.
Well, let me ask this, because so you've opened my eyes when you introduced starfish, right, on top of those circles of influence. What have you seen to be the shift? Because I'm sure you've run those individually, and I've run them both separately, but seeing them on top of each other, can you maybe talk about the benefit and the clarity maybe that you discovered by actually running that exercise with them combined?
Great question. Well, you just gave the answer, clarity, right? Because if I give you feedback and I say, I don't think this is good. Okay, what about it's not good? I need more context. And so when I say stop doing this thing, there's no question about my intent with bringing that up to you, or start doing, or less of. That context frames whatever's said. So it's within that context that gives me a way that I don't have to read, because again, they're not in the meetings. You're going to read this well after the fact. And so if it's not clear enough and you don't understand what they mean by it, at least the segmentation of those 5 segments at least gives you some context. So that helps you, if anything, go back and ask a better question. But if nothing else, it creates clarity. That's been the biggest difference, because teams went from, they share general concepts, or they solve a problem within a team, but this team solved the same problem one way, 3 other teams solved it a different way, and none of them know that the others solved it. What an opportunity to figure out that shared learning is available, but it's never going to happen inside a team unless someone just happens to know someone from that other team. You know what I mean? So we are creating happy accidents of discovery by bringing it all together. Good question. Who else? Can you facilitate my team? I got a direct message from someone. That's funny. I won't out the person. Can you facilitate my team? Not kidding. Probably not, but thanks. It's funny. All right. What else do we have? I'm sure there's other questions. I mean, let me just ask this.
John has a question. John has
a question.
Great. John, go for it.
As well. So my question's around self-management and locus of control and the journey, because I think if you do this straight away, you might destroy or you might damage self-management because it's creating a central thing. I see the value in doing it, but I'm just wondering about the evolution of the journey and embedding that within the team, so the teams have ownership of the surfacing of information rather than it's done to, it's done with. And I'm wondering what the journey within IBM and the teams were on this journey, whether it was done to or whether they went on that journey and it evolved over time.
Yeah, it is definitely an evolution. Though I would push back on your statement the way you framed it, but I hear what you're saying. It's this. We didn't start here, right? We came to a place where we realized, because I was able to go facilitate 26 different teams, right? As a coach, I saw what no one else saw. No one else went to 26 different retrospectives. So I saw patterns that no one else was seeing. And so what I did is I first just looked at the tools we were using in the CRMs that we had and the way they were reporting. What were they reporting against? Turns out it was activity, right? Not outcomes. And then number two was I said, well, how do you prioritize the value delivery? And then we used a basic Kanban board for that with some web limits. And what I did is I did two important things. I said, remember, this is sellers. I was doing this with digital sales, so context here, but apply as needed in yours. I said, is it revenue or non-revenue generating, right? Because the first thing is free the seller to actually sell, duh. And number two was, is this good, high value, good value, low value? And in their done column, each one of the cards had that label on it. And what it taught us early was that there was very little that was revenue generating and high value together. And so when I saw that pattern, I went, well, why is that? And it turns out that we were burdening them with activity metrics, which meant low value BAU stuff was being prioritized over high value client facing work. We didn't intend to do that. No one was thinking, let's not do this. It just was a natural byproduct of a command and control environment that's shifting into an agile environment. So by making that a numeric understanding, we were able to first say, hey, do we understand something? And you feel seen, heard, and validated right there. That's before the retrospective. So the team already saw their ability to process and understand was owned by them. They manage themselves. We do set a vision and direction. Kennedy came along and said, we're going to put a man on the moon within 10 years. And then what was the objective? Establish the Apollo program. What were the key results? We got to figure out how to make a propulsion system that works. We got to figure out how to get them there. We got to figure out how to get them back, right? And so it was pretty easy to start then saying, well, that's how, from an OKR standpoint, this is how you would arrive. Everybody still picks their own key results and actions because the teams are the ones who are the experts. We don't tell them how to do that. It's GPS. We're not going to pre-describe the route. We're just saying, but we are going to the moon, right? We're not doing that. So plan accordingly. So I don't think it comes down to when I built this, there was that journey from how they got to this stage, but I've never ever done anything to take away from their own ownership, accountability, and self-directedness. If anything, we've leaned to it more and more. And I do that because the retrospective radar is a piece for the retrospective, but I also then look at the things we're saying and I look at our OKRs and I go, are we moving the right needles? Is this the stuff that matters? Are we talking about the same things? And it's that holistic concept that lets us understand where we're still holding on to tightly and where we need to give teams more control and authority. Good question. Mike, go ahead. I think you're muted, Mike.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
How about now?
Now I can hear you.
Okay, so number one, sorry to ambush you with that question. Number two, I have facilitated the Retro Radar for a couple teams inside IBM as well. And just a couple times, so I don't have all the data processing that Anthony has done. I'll just tell you that when we did it with a couple of design-related teams where they're taking on service-oriented work, it actually helped them surface what the real structural problems were in their organization. And they're right now in the process of redesigning their entire governance model simply because we did that Retro Radar activity. So thank you, Anthony.
That's really cool to hear. I didn't know that. Thanks, Mike. I know we've got 1 minute. I would of course encourage everybody. I'm just going to do the blatant plug to connect with me on LinkedIn. So I'm just going to type that into the chat.
While you're doing that, you did recently, I think it was mentioned, David mentioned it, you wrote a post about the Retrospective Radar. Is it something that you've shared a template of or anything like that we could maybe...
Yeah, actually, there's a link on my, if you go to my thing on my profile, I think one of the first things I've got saved is a Retrospective Radar link. I can actually pull it real quick and pop it in here, though. Give me 1 second, and I'll just do that. LinkedIn, I'll just pop it into the chat. But again, this was this high-level concept, right? What I want to do is drive into, but how does it work for you? And ultimately, I think every team has the ability to leverage a retrospective radar today. I don't care if it's Miro or Mural or whatever tool, pick your tool. That's less important to me. I think it's more about, do you have a way to think this way? Because what we're driving towards is helping teams understand why, and leaders understand why, so we can get out of their way and support them, right? This is such a huge shift because so many people still have the limitations of what got them to where they are in their culture, and this is a way to break that open and address the root cause. I like to joke that it's kind of like the 11-foot pole. You know, the 11-foot pole is a pole you use for things you don't touch with your 10-foot pole. This lets us do that. Here's that link, by the way. All right. I think I'm at time. So John, Isaac, team, everybody, thank you so much. I love doing this. It was fun.
Yeah.
Can I do one last question? I'm sorry. Can I do one last question?
David, hold on. Yeah, if Anthony can stay on for a minute, but let me just wrap up because we'll let everybody else go, but and we'll stop the recording. But just to say, Anthony, thank you for taking the time to be here and share this with us.
Yeah.
Great insights, great tool. And I love that you said it can start right away, right? You can start using it. So I do encourage everyone, connect with Anthony, learn from him. I'm excited about deploying this in the teams that I work with. So Anthony, thank you again for doing that. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here. And